Americans spend an average of 293 hours per year sitting in traffic going absolutely nowhere. We're grinding through commutes to jobs we tolerate in cities we can't afford, dreaming about someday while our gas tank bleeds money at every red light. Here's what they don't tell you. The best drives in America aren't about getting somewhere. They're about going nowhere on purpose. We're counting down the 8 best American road trips everyone should do at least once. Routes so visually devastating, so perfectly ridiculous in their engineering, that you'll actually want to slow down. These aren't your influencer-approved hidden gem weekend getaways. We're talking about highways that carve through mountains that shouldn't have roads, bridges that float over oceans, and one route so remote that your cell phone will give up entirely and your car might file for emotional support. The list escalates from take your parents accessible to write a will first commitment level. We've got fall foliage classics, ocean drives that make you question physics, and one Alaskan nightmare that's only passable 4 months a year and comes with legitimate bear warnings. Some of these you can knock out in an afternoon, others require planning, prayer, and a vehicle that won't quit when the pavement does. By the time we hit number 1, we're 414 miles north of Fairbanks with 0 cell service and nothing but tundra, trucks, and the northern lights. If you've been waiting for a sign to stop scrolling and start driving, this is it. Hit subscribe if you're tired of living vicariously through other people's road trip TikToks. Drop a comment with the one drive you've been putting off. And if you've actually done the Dalton Highway, you're either lying or certifiably unhinged. And we respect both. Let's start where everyone starts. With a road so famous, it has its own Instagram hashtag and merchandise. Road trip number 8, Blue Ridge Parkway, Virginia to North Carolina. The Blue Ridge Parkway is America's training wheels for scenic driving. It's 469 miles of paved, groomed, aggressively maintained proof that the National Park Service takes its job seriously. This is the road trip you do with your parents, your in-laws, or anyone who thinks adventure means staying at a Hampton Inn with continental breakfast. And that's not an insult. It's perfect. The parkway runs from Shenandoah National Park in Virginia down to Great Smoky Mountains National Park in North Carolina, threading through the Appalachian Highlands like a very polite, very well-funded nature documentary. The speed limit is 45 miles per hour, which sounds restrictive until you realize you'll be stopping every 3 miles anyway, because another overlook just appeared with another impossibly pretty view of another ridge fading into blue haze. Fun fact, the Blue Ridge Parkway took 52 years to complete. Construction started in 1935 during the Great Depression as a jobs program and didn't finish until 1987. That's longer than it took to build the interstate highway system. The result is a road so meticulously planned that every curve feels intentional, every vista choreographed. Peak fall foliage season, late September through early November, turns this into a slow motion parade of leaf peepers driving Subarus at 22 miles per hour with their hazards on. According to the National Park Service, the parkway sees roughly 15 million visitors annually, making it the most visited unit in the entire park system. On October weekends, the overlooks look like tailgate parties without the football. But here's the thing, it's beautiful enough that you don't care. You're crawling along at grandma speed, listening to folk music or podcasts or whatever helps you process the fact that trees can turn that shade of orange, and you're completely fine with it. The parkway has no commercial vehicles, no billboards, and virtually no services for miles at a stretch. You're in a curated wilderness experience, and the curation is the point. Picture this, early morning in October, fog pooling in the valleys below Craggy Gardens. You pull into an overlook, engine ticking as it cools. The air smells like wet leaves and wood smoke from some invisible cabin. You hear nothing but wind and the distant call of a hawk. Your biggest decision is whether to hike the half-mile trail or just stand here with bad coffee from the last gas station 40 miles back. One local described it perfectly. The parkway is where northerners come to remember what fall used to look like before climate change made it confusing. The Blue Ridge Parkway is accessible, gorgeous, and requires 0 off-road capability. You could do this in a Honda Civic with a missing hubcap, which makes it the perfect entry point because from here, things get significantly less civilized. Road trip number 7, Pacific Coast Highway, California State Route 1. If the Blue Ridge Parkway is a gentle Appalachian hug, the Pacific Coast Highway is California screaming, "Look what I can do" for 656 miles straight. State Route 1, the PCH to anyone who's driven it and wants you to know, runs from Dana Point in Orange County up to Leggett in Northern California. But the iconic stretch is Big Sur, 90 miles of cliffside drama between Carmel and San Simeon, where the road clings to mountainsides, like it's personally offended by the concept of solid ground. This is the road trip that launched 1,000 engagement photos. According to Visit California, Big Sur alone draws over 3 million visitors annually, and roughly 70% of them are specifically there for the drive. The Pacific crashes against rocks 300 feet below. Redwoods grow out of canyon walls. Sea lions bark from beaches you can't reach. And every 10 minutes, another turnout appears with another angle on the same impossible coastline. The engineering is legitimately insane. Highway 1 was completed in 1937 after 18 years of construction that involved prison labor, dynamite, and what one historian called an absolutely unhinged disregard for worker safety. The result is a 2-lane ribbon of asphalt that feels like it's one mudslide away from becoming a very expensive artificial reef. In 2017, a landslide at Mud Creek buried a quarter-mile section of the highway under 40 feet of rock and dirt. It took 14 months and $54 million to rebuild. The road reopened. 2 years later, another slide. The highway just keeps getting rebuilt because apparently California refuses to admit defeat to geology. But when it's open, chef's kiss. You're driving through postcard scenery at 35 miles per hour because the turns are legitimately technical, and also because you're distracted by the fact that the ocean is the color of a sports drink and there's a waterfall just casually spilling onto the shoulder. Bixby Bridge, the iconic 714-foot concrete arch that every car commercial has used, sits 280 feet above Bixby Creek. According to the Monterey County Tourism Bureau, it's the second most photographed bridge in California after the Golden Gate. People propose on that bridge. People scatter ashes off that bridge. One Reddit user put it perfectly. Bixby Bridge is where you realize your car insurance premium might be worth it. Picture this. Late afternoon in June, marine layer starting to roll in. You're pulled over at McWay Falls, watching an 80-foot waterfall drop directly onto a beach that looks like a screensaver. Purple wildflowers grow out of the cliffs. The air smells like salt and eucalyptus. A family from Ohio is taking 47 photos of the same view. You don't blame them. The PCH is famous for a reason. It's accessible, it's dramatic, and it doesn't require a 4x4 or survival skills. You just need gas money, patience for slow-moving RVs, and the self-control not to propose to someone you just met at a scenic overlook. And if you thought California's cliffside theatrics were impressive, wait until we hit the Midwest and drive through America's roadside museum of nostalgia and broken dreams. Road trip number 6, Route 66, Chicago to Santa Monica. Route 66 is less a road trip and more a 2,448-mile archaeological dig through American optimism. The Mother Road ran from Chicago to Santa Monica from 1926 until 1985, when the interstate highway system finished killing it off and turned it into a heritage route for people with time, irony, and a solid podcast queue. What's left is a fragmented path through 8 states, where you'll see more historic Route 66 signs than actual historic Route 66 pavement. According to the National Park Service, only about 85% of the original route is still drivable. The rest has been paved over, rerouted, or reclaimed by fields that don't care about your nostalgia. But the sections that survive, they're perfect time capsules of mid-century American car culture, back when road trips were the vacation and roadside attractions were unironically building giant blue whales and wigwam motels. You'll drive through towns that peaked in 1955 and never recovered. You'll see diners with original Formica counters serving pie that tastes like your grandmother's resentment. You'll stop at the Cadillac Ranch in Amarillo. 10 Cadillacs buried nose down in a field, covered in graffiti, which is either profound art or the world's most committed junkyard, depending on your mood. You'll visit the Blue Whale of Catoosa, Oklahoma, a giant concrete whale built in the 1970s as a swimming hole and anniversary gift, because apparently that's what romance looked like during the Nixon administration. Fun fact, Route 66 was the primary route for Dust Bowl migrants fleeing to California in the 1930s. John Steinbeck called it the Mother Road, the road of flight. Now it's the road of flight for retirees in rented RVs trying to remember what America used to feel like before everything became a chain. The roadside motels are the real attraction. The Wigwam Motel in Holbrook, Arizona lets you sleep in a concrete teepee for $89 a night. Original neon signs flicker on at dusk like they're trying to remember their lines. One travel blogger described Route 66 perfectly. It's like driving through your grandfather's photo album if your grandfather was really into kitsch and had questionable taste in architecture. Picture this: dusk in Williams, Arizona. You're parked outside Cruiser's Route 66 Cafe, which is decorated like a 1950s explosion. Neon everywhere, chrome accents, a jukebox playing Buddy Holly. You order a milkshake that costs $8 and tastes like corn syrup and nostalgia. Outside, a family from Germany is taking photos in front of a vintage gas pump that hasn't pumped gas since Carter was president. You're not even mad about it. Route 66 is long, slow, and requires a tolerance for irony and fried food. You won't see natural wonders. You'll see human wonders. The weird, wonderful things people built when they thought the road would last forever. And if you thought roadside Americana was charming, wait until we go vertical and drive a road that makes engineers cry. Road trip number 5. Going to the Sun Road, Glacier National Park, Montana. Going to the Sun Road is 50 miles of, I can't believe they built this, carved through the spine of the Rocky Mountains. This is the road trip that separates tourists from believers. It runs from the west side of Glacier National Park to the east, climbing 3,300 feet to Logan Pass at 6,646 feet elevation, crossing the Continental Divide and making you question every life choice that led to you white-knuckling a steering wheel on a cliff with no guardrail. The road was completed in 1932 after 11 years of construction that killed 3 workers, bankrupted budgets, and required blasting through solid rock with dynamite and Italian stonemasons who were apparently immune to fear. The result is a National Historic Landmark that the Federal Highway Administration calls an engineering marvel, and everyone else calls absolutely unhinged. Here are the specs. The road is 2 lanes wide, barely. In some sections, it's 16 feet across. Your Honda Pilot is 6.5 feet wide. Do the math. The Park Service bans vehicles over 21 feet long and 8 feet wide, which means your buddy's RV dreams die at the gate. There are 2,885-foot drop-offs with nothing between you and eternity but vibes and prayer. And oh, it's only fully open from late June to mid-September because Montana winter laughs at road maintenance. According to the National Park Service, Going to the Sun Road sees roughly 2 million visitors during its short season. That's 2 million people doing 15 miles per hour around hairpin turns while incoming traffic passes within inches, and someone in the back seat dry heaves from either altitude sickness or justified terror. But when you reach Logan Pass, worth it. Alpine meadows explode with wildflowers. Mountain goats wander across the parking lot like they own the place, which legally they do. The Hidden Lake Trail offers views so spectacular that people propose there, which is either romantic or a cynical play for sympathy if the answer is no. The east side descent is somehow worse than the climb. You're going downhill on a road that was built when cars had 40 horsepower and mechanical brakes. Your modern vehicle wants to go 50. The road wants you to go 25. Compromise is not an option. One park ranger told us off the record, "We scrape someone off the guardrail about once a season. It's always someone from Florida in a sedan who thought scenic byway meant easy." Picture this: mid-July at sunrise, Logan Pass. The air is thin and cold enough to see your breath. Glaciers cling to the peaks above like they're holding on out of spite. A marmot waddles across the trail, completely unbothered. You're 6,600 feet up, surrounded by people from 6 countries taking the same photo of the same view, and you don't even care because the mountains are so absurdly beautiful it feels like a special effect. Going to the Sun Road requires timing, nerve, and acceptance that you will be passed by someone's grandmother in a Prius going uphill faster than you. It's not the longest drive on this list. It's just the one most likely to make you thank physics for working. And if you thought mountain passes were intense, wait until we drive over the ocean itself. Road trip number 4. Overseas Highway, Florida Keys. The Overseas Highway is 113 miles of bridge after bridge after bridge, connecting 43 islands through water so clear you can see your regrets dissolving in real time. This is US Route 1 from Florida City to Key West, but calling it a highway is generous. It's a series of causeways held together by concrete, engineering hubris, and the absolute certainty that one Category 5 hurricane could turn the whole thing into an expensive artificial reef. You're not driving through Florida. You're driving over the ocean while Florida watches from a distance, concerned. The road was built on the bones of Henry Flagler's Overseas Railroad, which was completed in 1912 and destroyed by the Labor Day hurricane of 1935. A storm so catastrophic it killed 400 people and turned the railroad into scrap metal scattered across the Atlantic. The state of Florida looked at the wreckage and said, "Let's build a road there." The modern overseas highway opened in 1938 and has been rebuilt, reinforced, and re-engineered multiple times since, because apparently saltwater, hurricanes, and concrete have an ongoing disagreement about permanence. According to the Florida Department of Transportation, the route includes 42 bridges, the longest of which is the 7-mile bridge, which is actually 6.765 miles, but 7-mile bridge tested better with tourists. You're driving over open water with nothing but asphalt, ocean, and the occasional terrified family from Minnesota doing 40 in a rental minivan. Fun fact, the old 7-mile bridge, the one that's slowly crumbling into the sea, is still visible running parallel to the new bridge. It's used for fishing, filming car commercials, and reminding you what happens when infrastructure meets saltwater and loses. The bridge also starred in True Lies, when Arnold Schwarzenegger flew a Harrier jet under it, which tells you everything about Hollywood's relationship with physics. The overseas highway is objectively insane infrastructure. It shouldn't exist, but it does. And according to the Monroe County Tourist Development Council, the Keys draw over 4 million visitors annually who drive it anyway, usually while listening to Jimmy Buffett and pretending they're the kind of person who could live here. You can't. Key West median home price is $950,000 for a house that floods during king tides and attracts iguanas like a reptile convention. But for 113 miles of surreal ocean driving, you can pretend. The drive escalates in absurdity as you go south. By mile marker 0 in Key West, you're in a town that's geographically closer to Havana than Miami, culturally closer to Margaritaville than America, and functionally operating as a theme park that happens to have permanent residents. Roosters roam the streets. Tourists on pedal bars sing Sweet Caroline at 2 p.m. Ernest Hemingway's house is now a museum for six-toed cats. Picture this, late afternoon in Islamorada, you're stopped at a bait shop that also serves key lime pie. The water is the color of Windex. Pelicans dive bomb the dock. A guy in a tank top is selling coconuts out of a cooler with a hand-painted sign that says, cheap. You buy one. It costs $8. You don't argue because you're driving over the ocean and economics don't apply here anymore. One travel writer summarized it perfectly. The overseas highway is what happens when you give engineers a blank check and tell them to make bad decisions beautiful. The Keys require zero off-road skills. You just need AC, sunscreen, and acceptance that you're in a place where logic and hurricane warnings coexist peacefully until they don't. At least the overseas highway has guardrails. Our next drive has cliffs, hairpins, and a nickname that literally includes the word terror. Road trip number 3, $1 Million Highway, Colorado, US 550. The $1 Million Highway is 25 miles of who approved this, connecting Silverton to Ouray through Colorado's San Juan Mountains, and it earned its name either from the $1 million of gold ore in the roadbed or the $1 million it would take to convince you to drive it in winter. Both explanations are plausible. This is US Route 550 between Silverton and Ouray, a stretch of pavement that climbs to 11,018 feet at Red Mountain Pass. Features no guardrails on 400-foot drop-offs and includes hairpin turns so sharp that tractor trailers are legally banned, and even some RVs require a police escort. According to the Colorado Department of Transportation, the road sees roughly 20 fatal accidents per year on the full route, and while most happen outside the $1 million section, the psychological damage is evenly distributed. The road was carved out of cliffs in the 1880s as a toll road for ore wagons, which explains why it feels like it was designed by people with a fundamentally different relationship with death. The modern paved version opened in 1924, and the state's decision to not add guardrails wasn't an oversight. It's because avalanches would just rip them off every winter anyway, so why bother? One CDOT engineer told us off the record, guardrails give people false confidence. Fear keeps them alive. The scenery is objectively stunning. You're driving through mountains that look like they were designed by a committee of geologists showing off. Red Mountain Pass gets its name from the iron oxide staining the peaks rust orange, which sounds pretty until you remember you're staring at oxidized metal while navigating a road with the turning radius of a grocery cart. In summer, the road is manageable. Terrifying, but manageable. Tourists crawl along at 20 miles per hour, pulling over every quarter mile to let locals pass in trucks going 50 because they've made made peace with mortality. But winter is when the $1 Million Highway earns its reputation. According to the Silverton Avalanche Center, the Red Mountain Pass corridor sees an average of 30 to 40 avalanche events per season. Some years, the highway closes for days, while crews literally blast the mountains with howitzers to trigger controlled slides before nature does it uncontrolled. Picture this: September morning, Red Mountain Pass. Aspen trees are turning gold against dark evergreens. The air is thin and sharp. You're doing 15 miles per hour around a switchback with no shoulder, no guardrail, and a 500-foot drop to a creek that looks like a blue thread from up here. Your passenger has their eyes closed. You're questioning your relationship. A motorcyclist passes you going uphill, and you briefly wonder if they're brave or just statistically overdue. One travel blogger described it perfectly. The $1 Million Highway is beautiful the way a knife is beautiful. Objectively impressive, absolutely capable of killing you. The drive from Silverton to Ouray takes about 45 minutes if you're local, 90 minutes if you're sane, an eternity if you're from Florida and didn't realize Colorado had vertical terrain. Ouray, nicknamed the Switzerland of America by people who've never been to Switzerland, sits at the bottom like a reward for surviving. Hot springs, Victorian architecture, and the smug satisfaction of making it down alive. This is the road trip that separates I like scenic drives from I have made poor choices and I'm committed now. And if you thought narrow mountain passes were stressful, wait until we hit a road that's only open 4 months a year and requires checking avalanche forecasts before you leave. Road trip number 2, Beartooth Highway, Montana/Wyoming, US 212. The Beartooth Highway is 68 miles of alpine insanity that connects Red Lodge, Montana to Cook City, Montana by way of Wyoming, 10,947 feet of elevation, and a series of switchbacks that look like someone spilled spaghetti on a topographic map. This is US Route 212 across the Beartooth Plateau, and it holds the distinction of being called the most beautiful drive in America by the late Charles Kuralt, who clearly had a specific definition of beautiful that included psychologically damaging. The road climbs from 5,200 feet in Red Lodge to nearly 11,000 feet at Beartooth Pass and 68 miles of pavement that includes 66 switchbacks, dozens of alpine lakes, and 0 cell service because God himself couldn't get a signal up here. The highway was completed in 1936 after 3 years of construction that involved dynamite, Depression-era labor crews, and an engineering philosophy best described as, let's see what happens. According to the National Scenic Byways program, the Beartooth is one of only 31 roads designated as an All-American road, which is the highest honor a highway can receive and presumably comes with therapy vouchers for first-time drivers. Here's the thing about the Beartooth: it's only fully open from late May to mid-October. The rest of the year, it's buried under snow measured in feet, not inches. Even in summer, you can hit snowstorms at the pass. The Montana Department of Transportation keeps plows on standby through July because mountain weather doesn't care about your vacation plans. In 2019, the highway didn't fully open until July 12th due to record snowfall. Tourists who'd booked June trips just had to accept that nature won this round. The scenery is legitimately otherworldly. You're above tree line for miles, driving through tundra that looks like it belongs in Alaska or the surface of another planet. Alpine lakes, there are over 100 visible from the road, reflect peaks that still have snow in August. Bighorn sheep wander across the pavement. Marmots sun themselves on rocks. The air is so thin that your car loses 30% of its horsepower, which you'll notice immediately when you're trying to pass a motorhome doing 12 miles per hour uphill. Fun fact, the Beartooth Plateau is one of the oldest exposed rock formations in North America, dating back nearly 3 billion years. You're driving across Precambrian granite while your engine screams and your ears pop and your passenger reads aloud from the What to Do If You Encounter a Grizzly Bear pamphlet they grabbed at the visitor center. Picture this: early morning in August, Beartooth Pass. The sun is just clearing the peaks, turning the lakes copper and gold. You're parked at an overlook at 10,947 feet, drinking gas station coffee that tastes like regret. A family from Texas is layering on jackets because it's 38 degrees, and their summer wardrobe wasn't built for this. The wind is relentless. The views are ridiculous. You're higher than most ski resorts, and you drove here in a Subaru. One ranger told us off the record, the Beartooth is where people from sea level learn what altitude does to a human body. We hand out Dramamine like candy. The descent into Cook City is almost worse than the climb because you're going downhill on a road designed before anti-lock brakes existed, and your vehicle wants to accelerate into the next county. Cook City itself is a town of 75 people that exists solely to service Yellowstone tourists and snowmobilers with more courage than sense. The Beartooth Highway requires planning, timing, and the acceptance that you might turn back at the first switchback and no one will judge you. It's stunningly beautiful, it's legitimately remote, and it's only the second most extreme drive on this list, because if you thought 11,000 feet in Montana was intense, wait until we go 414 miles north of Fairbanks into a place where the sun doesn't set for weeks and your emergency contact is a satellite phone. Road trip number 1, Dalton Highway, Alaska Route 11. 414 miles north of Fairbanks. The sun doesn't set for weeks. Grizzly bears have right of way, and your cell phone becomes an expensive paperweight. Welcome to the Dalton Highway, the most remote road in America that you can actually drive without a military clearance. This is Alaska Route 11, and it was never meant for tourists. Built in 1974 as a supply route for the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, the Dalton remains one of the most hostile roads in North America. There are 2 gas stations on 414 miles of gravel and mud. 2, one at Yukon River Camp, mile 56, and one at Coldfoot, mile 175. After that, you've got 240 miles of nothing between you and Deadhorse except tundra, caribou, and the growing certainty that this was a mistake. According to the Alaska Department of Transportation, the Dalton sees roughly 250 vehicles per day in summer, and 200 of those are commercial trucks hauling equipment to the North Slope oil fields. The other 50 are tourists who watched one too many episodes of Ice Road Truckers and thought, I could do that. You can't, or you can, but it's going to hurt. The road is 75% gravel, maintained just well enough to keep oil trucks moving. The trucks don't slow down for tourists. You're expected to pull over at turnouts and let the professionals pass. It's not rude, it's tundra etiquette. These drivers are working, you're sightseeing, get out of the way. The Dalton crosses the Arctic Circle at mile 115, marked by a sign and absolutely nothing else, because the Arctic Circle is a line on a map, not a place. You're now in a region where summer means 24 hours of daylight and winter means 24 hours of darkness, and mild weather means it's only minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit instead of minus 50 degrees Fahrenheit. According to the Bureau of Land Management, the Dalton is only reliably passable from late May through mid-September. Outside that window, you're gambling with ice, whiteout conditions, and the very real possibility of getting stuck between gas stations with no cell service and a tow truck 300 miles away. The wildlife is legitimate. Grizzly bears, moose, caribou herds that cross the road in waves and don't care if you're late, musk oxen that look like they evolved specifically to survive the apocalypse. According to Alaska Fish and Game, there are an estimated 3,000 grizzlies in the Brooks Range alone, and they have right of way. Always. The scenery is stark, brutal, and strangely beautiful in a way that makes you understand why some people just stay in Alaska and never come back. You'll drive through Atagun Pass at 4,739 feet, the only road crossing of the Brooks Range, where the pipeline snakes alongside the highway like a silver thread through mountains that look older than time. You'll see the tundra bloom with wildflowers in June, a brief explosion of color before winter reclaims everything. You'll cross the Yukon River on a bridge that feels too small for the job, and then you'll reach Deadhorse. Deadhorse is not a town, it's an industrial camp with a population that fluctuates between 25 and 3,000 depending on oil field activity. There are no real amenities, no charm, no reason to be there unless you're working on the North Slope or you drove 414 miles just to say you did it, which, let's be honest, is the only reason tourists go. Picture this, midnight in July, somewhere past Coldfoot. The sun is still up because the sun doesn't set. The tundra stretches forever in shades of green and brown. You haven't seen another car in 90 minutes. Your gas gauge is at half, and you're doing math in your head about fuel economy versus distance to Deadhorse. A caribou watches you from the shoulder. You're 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and your phone has been useless since Fairbanks. This is as far from civilization as you can drive in America. One tour guide described it perfectly. The Dalton Highway is where you find out if you're actually the adventurous person you tell people you at parties. The Dalton requires a capable vehicle, preferably four-wheel drive with high clearance, spare tires, extra fuel, and the kind of roadside emergency kit that includes flares, food, and a way to call for help when there's no signal. Most rental companies in Alaska explicitly ban their vehicles from the Dalton, the ones that don't charge insurance premiums that assume you're coming back with damage. This is the drive that separates everyone else from the certifiably committed. It's remote, it's harsh, it's stunningly, unforgivingly real, and it's exactly where we started. Americans spending their lives going nowhere in traffic, dreaming about someday. The Dalton Highway is someday, so is the Beartooth, so is Big Sur, Route 66, and every other road on this list. The question isn't whether you can afford the time or the gas or the risk. The question is, what are you waiting for? Hit subscribe if this made you want to quit your job and drive north. Share this with someone who's been talking about a road trip for 5 years. Drop a comment with the one drive you're doing next. And if you've survived the Dalton Highway, drop your story below because we need proof. Now get out of traffic and go.